Well, you know, I learned something last week. There are 841 words in the English language that will get you kicked off of Facebook and YouTube. Now, tonight's a little bit different. Tonight's just a little bit different than last week. Actually, it's a lot different than last week. But it's vitally important. I just got just a little recap. A friend of mine called me today, and he banks with U.S. Bank. It's a big national bank. And he said, did you get a message? I said, no, I don't get a message from U.S. Bank because I don't bank there. He said, I got an email yesterday explaining the new FedNow program, and said that his bank account number, current bank account number, would become the new FedNow number, and all the benefits that were going to go along with that whenever they switch to the digital dollar. It is coming, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. It is coming. It's just a matter of when. You know, I think they'll probably try to sneak it in kind of easy, and they'll probably give you benefits like, oh, we're going to put this much money in your account automatically. You know, it's going to seem really enticing. I mean, otherwise, who's going to fall for it? You know. But anyway, I'm not going to get on that tonight because I'm not going to get booted off again. I'm going to try anyway. Let me put it that way. I did take the liberty of getting these. If anybody does not have one of these, they're out at the Welcome Center out here. They're free. You can pick them up. It's amazing the number of people that don't know what's in this. You know, how many people have read the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, you know, or the amendments? And who has read these? And sadly to say, most people have not, and they don't know their history. They don't, and that's what this class is going to be a lot tonight. It's going to be a lot of history, okay? I'll try not to make it boring, but there is a lot of history that's involved in it. Pastor wanted me to teach, basically show people that this country was founded on Christian principles. And it was, absolutely. That's not what we're seeing today. But I don't want to, a lot of times you hear from somebody and they'll say, well, these people were deists, they were agnostics, they were atheists. It's a secular society, it's a secular, constitution. And it's like, if you believe that, then guess what? That becomes your reality. That becomes true to you. It's not accurate, and that's what we're going to look at tonight. So there's a lot of interesting things in here that I think probably a lot of you don't know. Some of you might. I'm sure Noah probably knows most everything like that. But he and I are on the same page on things. But to me, it's more important to go back to what someone actually said. Don't go back to what somebody said that somebody said. Let's go back to the original. Let's go back to the start, okay? Because things have a tendency to get lost in translations over the years, all right? So that's what we're going to do a lot tonight. So anyway, all right. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to work on rebuilding our biblical worldview. Okay, that's what this class is about tonight. We're going to try to open your eyes where you will see the original documents. We're going to go back to some of the original stuff and show you that this country was founded on Christian principles. We've heard that a lot, but do we know where it is? Do we know what things had changed? And we're going to look at some things that had changed and when they changed. It's really, really important. Okay, now. This is my last slide from last week. Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it, okay? And we don't want to do that. But sadly, most people don't know their history. They don't know it. And anyway, I don't have a clicker, so I'm having to, there we go. President Obama says, no longer is the United States a Christian nation, okay? And to some degree, he's probably right. Because if you look at what's going on today, are we exemplifying No, not at all. Not at all. But were we founded that way? That's the key. If you are a Christian in today's day and time, you are in a very small minority. Now you may say, "Oh, most of the United States is Christian." No, that's not the case. Not anymore. It used to be, but not now. Okay. All right. Karl Marx. Keep people from their history, and they are easily controlled. Don't ever forget that. That is one of the tenets of Marxism, is they change the history. And goodness gracious, the amount of history that has been changed that we don't know about. They're rewriting textbooks. They're rewriting movies, television shows. You're not getting the real truth. We have been hijacked. This country has been hijacked. Very simple. It has been. Now, it hasn't happened overnight. It's happened, we saw a big push. Some people say 1963, and we'll get into that. I think it's way before that. I think it's back around the turn of the century, late 1800s, okay? That's when we really started seeing it. But let's get on into that. Providence has given to our people the choice of their rulers, and it is the duty as well as the privilege, interest of our Christian nation to select and prefer Christians for their rulers. Now, how many do that today? Do we prefer Christians as rulers? No. In fact, quite the contrary. And I'm not going to get off on certain people, certain presidents and stuff, but that might get me shut off. Next slide, please. No purpose of action against religion can be imputed to any legislation, state or national, because this is a religious people. This is a Christian nation. This is Justice David Brewer, Supreme Court. We're going to get into the Supreme Court a lot tonight because a lot of things have changed. And, well, let me move on. Next slide. Psalm chapter 11. When the foundations are being destroyed, what can the righteous do? That's a current statement. When the foundations are being destroyed, which is right now, what can the righteous do? What are we supposed to do? We're going to get in there and we're going to repair some of the foundations. That's what we're doing here tonight. We're going to repair some foundations that you probably didn't even know were broken, were damaged, okay? But when you change someone's belief system, remember I told you last week, the things which you believe may not be reasonable or rational, but they do control your life. If you change what someone believes, if you change what's up here between their ears, it affects everything. It affects how they spend their money. It affects who they vote for. It affects their relationships with people. It affects everything. And so it's so important to believe the right things, okay? Now, how do we know real history? How do we know? We need to go back to the original documents, and that's what we're going to do tonight. All right. The Constitutional Convention, 1787, they all got together, and they all had their own plans, okay? New York had their plan, New Jersey had their plan, Connecticut had their plan, and none of them coincided with each other. And they were bickering and fighting, and they just didn't get along at all. It was a mess. It was a disaster. In fact, some of them were getting ready to walk off, and all of a sudden, Benjamin Franklin, being the eldest statements, he was 81 years old at the time. Now, normally he would write his sermons, he would write his speeches, and someone would get up and read them. He did this one literally off the cuff, live, okay? Now, it's a little bit lengthy, but I'm going to read it anyway, all right? In this situation of this assembly grouping, as it were, in the dark to find political truth and scarce able to distinguish it when presented to us, how has it happened, sir, that we have not hitherto once thought of humbly applying the Father of lights to illuminate our understanding. In the beginning of the contest with Great Britain, when we were sensible of danger and had daily prayer in this room for the divine protection, our prayers were heard and were graciously answered. All of us engaged in the struggle must have observed frequent instances from superintending providence in our favor. And we have now forgotten that powerful friend? Or do we imagine that we no longer need his assistance? I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. If a sparrow falls, cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without its aid? We have been assured in the sacred writings that except the Lord build, they labor in vain. I firmly believe this, and I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political blunder, this political building, no better than the builders of Babel. And we shall become a reproach and a byword down to future ages. I therefore beg leave to move that henceforth prayers imploring the assistance of heaven and its blessings on our deliberations be held in this assembly every morning before we proceed to business. Now, Benjamin Franklin was noted for being the least godly of any of the founding fathers. Now, if you didn't know, he quoted 14 different Bible verses in that. Now, he did this off the cuff, from memory. How many of us can deliver a speech with that many Bible verses from memory? I have to start thinking, you see. This was normal for them. Okay, it was just, that's just how they operated. That's how they talked. Now, whenever he got finished with that, everybody was tired, and so George Washington declared a recess, 3 days. Okay. Now, did they go to the beach? Did they go to the bars? Whatever? No. What did they do? They went to church. Went to church for three days. Okay. Very ungodly people. What did they do? They go to church. All right. And they listen to sermon after sermon after sermon, preaching unity, preaching godly wisdom. Does this sound like an atheistic, deistic, agnostic group of people? Not at all. Not at all. Now, no one can see their heart. Only God knows the intent and heart. Okay, I'm not saying that they were all saints by any stretch. No, but they had the right ideas. They were based in the right foundation. Okay. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Now, the interesting thing about this, next slide. John Quincy Adams, you ever heard of him? Okay. He said, with regard to the history contained in the Bible, it is not so much praiseworthy to be acquainted with it, but it's shameful to ignore it, to be ignorant of it. In other words, if you didn't know this stuff, that was shameful. If you couldn't pick this stuff out, if you couldn't pick out all the 14 Bible verses that Benjamin Franklin just quoted, that's shameful. Okay. Today we're like, hey, I recognize that. Wow, I did a good job. Give me a star, you know. No, back then it was like, you didn't get that? Boy, bad. Theodore Roosevelt, the teachings of the Bible are so interwoven and intertwined with our civic and social life. Get it? Civic and social, not spiritual life, but civic and social life. Far beyond church. Between our civic and social life, that it would be literally impossible for us to figure to ourselves what that life would be like if these teachings were removed. Franklin D. Roosevelt, in the formative days of the Republic, the directing influence of the Bible exercised upon fathers of the nation is conspicuously evident. It's absolutely undeniable. Okay? Now, also, separation of powers, where do we get that? Jeremiah chapter 17. The three branches of government, Isaiah 33. A Republican form of government, Exodus chapter 18. Exodus chapter 18, when you go back and look at it, it says, select for me capable men, godly men from among you, okay, over thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10. Federal, state, county, and local. That's where they got this. That's where they got the idea of the republic. Was from Exodus chapter 18. Now, even Andrew Jackson, ungodly guy like him, okay? The Bible is the rock on which the republic rests. Now, you've heard me say the word republic several times. Now, you've probably heard that we live in a democracy. Have I ever heard that? Okay. Got a little clip here. Can you play that clip?
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
The El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
we are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
We are concerned about the troubling trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish fake stories that aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 That kind of makes the point. Does this seem like a free press to you? Yeah. They're reading from a script. The media is, I hate to say the media is by and large lying to you, but the media is by and large lying to you, okay? If you think you're going to get real factual truth by watching Fox News or CNN or ABC or NBC or any of those guys, think again, guys. It's not going to happen, okay? They're reading from a script, okay? And everybody's saying the same thing. And they say something loud enough, long enough, and often enough, and guess what? People believe it. And the things which they believe may not be reasonable or rational, but it does control their life. And that's the whole process. If they can say it over and over and over again, eventually you'll start believing it. Like a democracy, okay? Proverbs chapter 18, it says, in a lawsuit, the first to speak seems right until someone comes forward and cross-examines. If all you hear is one side all the time, over and over and over and over and over, guess what? That's going to become your belief. That's going to become your truth. Is it accurate? No, not at all. So anyway, Benjamin Rush. You may have ever heard of Benjamin Rush? Okay, pretty famous guy. Out of all the founding fathers, John Adams said that the three most influential founding fathers were George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Benjamin Rush. Most people have heard of the first two, but they've not really heard a whole lot about Benjamin Rush. He started the first Bible Society. He was responsible for starting Sunday school in churches. He established the first Abolitionist Society. He started 5 5 universities. 3 of them are still active today. He served in 3 presidential administrations. I mean, his accolades go on and on and on and on and on. Okay? And so he said a simple democracy is the devil's own government. And that's what he said. So let me show you something here also. In this little book right here. Let me see if I can find it for you. Oh, yeah. Article 4, Section 4, right here, page 15, if you want to look it up. It says, the United States shall guarantee every state in the Union a republican form of government, not a democracy. Not a democracy. Democracy is mob rule. That's what democracy is. Now, you will hear senators, I heard Nancy Pelosi say it, anyway, but you'll hear a lot of people. I heard Tucker Carlson talk about our democracy. We are not a democracy. Never have been, never will be. Okay? All right. Next slide, John Adams. Thank you. Remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. Okay, next one. Between a balanced republic and a democracy, the difference is like between order and chaos. The simple fact is that the United States is a republic, not a democracy, by purposeful design. And that's Justice John Marshall. Proverbs chapter 22. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. So many kids are not being taught real history. You're not going to hear this I guarantee you, in school, in a textbook, you will not hear this. You're going to be taught a democracy. Guarantee it. Over and over and over. That's all you're going to hear. You're going to hear one side. You're not going to hear the truth. But why? Because they've rewritten history. They've changed the history. And people who don't know their history, they're easier to control. Karl Marx. Actually, he was a smart guy, just kind of evil. But Zachary Taylor, old rough and ready, said the Bible is the best of books, and I wish it were in the hands of everyone. A free government cannot exist without religion and morals. And there cannot be morals without religion, especially should the Bible be placed in the hands of youth, of the young. It is the best school book in the world. Even Ulysses S. Grant, at the time of the centennial celebration, said, hold fast to the Bible as the sheet anchor of your liberties. Write its precepts in your heart and practice them in your lives. To influence of this book, we are indebted for all the progress made in true civilization. And this we must look for our guide in the future. He printed these little books off that gave them, I don't think I'm standing right in the middle of it. It says, to the children and youth of the U.S. He handed those cards out with that printed on them, okay? He wanted kids to get this. Kids need to understand our history. They need to understand the real history. Okay. Another quote by Benjamin Rush. The great enemy of the salvation of man, in my opinion, never invented more effective means of limiting Christianity from the world than by persuading mankind that it was improper to read the Bible at schools. I don't hear that in textbooks, you know. In 1844, Vidal versus Girard's executors ruled in an 8-0 decision. Notice they only had 8, didn't have 9. Anyway. That all public schools, it is absolutely essential that they teach Bible in their schools. That's a little different than today. Okay? They understood the importance of teaching godly values, of teaching true history, teaching the Bible in the school systems, because it instilled morals and it gave a moral foundation for the kids in the next generation. Supreme Court Justice Joseph Story in this decision said, "Why may not the Bible, especially the New Testament, be read and taught as divine revelation in the school?" Sure is different than today. Where we can, purest principles of or morality can be learned so clearly or so perfectly as from the New Testament. They really believe this stuff, you know. Now, things changed. We're going to fast forward about 120 years. 1963. How many of you remember 1963? I do. I remember going in, I was a first grader, okay, in 1963. And I remember standing there, and the principal would come over the intercom, and he would do morning prayer. He would do Pledge of Allegiance, all this kind of stuff. And I remember when they took it out, and I thought it was kind of weird. I thought it was kind of strange. Of course, I was just little, but I did notice it, okay? And a lot of things changed. They ruled 8-1 that legally or officially mandated Bible reading or prayer in public schools is unconstitutional. Now, how did that happen? We're going to get into that here in just a minute. What happened was they cited a psychologist, okay? They took things out of context and said if portions of the New Testament were read without explanation, they could be and have been psychologically harmful to the child. In other words, you can't teach the Bible, because if you read the New Testament as it stands, it might hurt somebody. It might offend somebody, okay? That's kind of what we see going on today. It gets worse, but anyway. But it also gets better. I've got some good news I'll share with you here shortly. Thomas Clark, the First Amendment's purpose was to create a complete and permanent separation of the spheres of religious activity and civil authority by comprehensively forbidding every form of public and or support for religion. Benjamin Rush said, "The Bible, when not read in schools, is seldom read in any subsequent period of life." There's another poll. I like polls. Today's Bible readers are defined as someone who reads the Bible at least 4 times a year. That's a Bible reader, okay? Last year, we lost 26 million of them that only read it 4 times a year. Talk about a sad state of affairs, okay? You've got to start this habit early. That's reading Bring a Child Up in the Way You Should Go. That is a literal statement. People with kids, start them when they're little. Don't hold back from them, okay? Tell them the truth. Tell them what's going on. I'll share a quick story. I like stories. This is actually a true story about my daughter. She'll probably be watching this and she'll say, "Dad." Anyway. We homeschool our kids, okay? We were waiting for a school to be erected here in Putnam County, and it never came to be. But anyway, next thing you know, they're off to college, so it just happens. But whenever my youngest one was little, she was doing what I think they call co-op, where you go to different places. And we never held anything back from our kids. We always told them the truth, And so she was maybe 7, 8 years old, 5, 6, something like that. And we drove up, and there was a bumper sticker on one of the ladies' cars. Gore Lieberman. And we've tried to build a biblical worldview with our children. And so my daughter looks at it and goes, "Homeschool?" And she's weighing this stuff out. And the lady got out of her car and she says, "Don't you know what abortion is?" little kid. What's the lady going to say? One more story. My daughter's, she's good at this kind of stuff. In Walmart. Anyway. Christmas time, okay? In the little basket, little leg sticking out, go with the basket. And the little lady at the cash register, old lady, nice lady, didn't mean anything. She said, "What's Santa Claus bring you for Christmas?" We've never lied to our kids, okay? And she said, "We don't believe in Santa Claus, we believe in Jesus." And it was like, it's the little things that make a difference. All right. The First Amendment. Everybody ever heard of the First Amendment? Congress shall make no law. We've heard this too. Anyway. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, the first part is this called the Establishment Clause. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. Now, what that does, that limits the federal government by prohibiting the establishment of a national religion. In other words, you can't have everybody Baptist, can't have everybody Methodist, can't have everybody Pentecostal or whatever, Church of God or whatever. That prevented the state, the federal government, from establishing a preset religion, okay? Then there's the Free Exercise Clause, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. This limits the federal government by prohibiting the interfering or limiting of public religious expressions. In other words, the government can't come in and tell you, you can't do this, which we've seen recently in the last 2 years or so. You can't do this. You have, I better, if I start getting somewhere where I shouldn't, just go, and I'll shut up, I'll move on. But I think you get my drift. All right. Now, here's where it starts getting interesting. Thomas Jefferson said, "I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state." We have heard that over and over and over. Separation of church and state, separation of church and state. Kind of like Barney Fife. But where did that come from? Where did we get that idea? Why do we have this, supposedly this big wall, this big barrier between separation of church and state? What happened is the Baptists from Danbury, Connecticut, after Thomas Jefferson got elected, they had concerns. They had concerns that the government was going to take their freedoms away. And they didn't like that idea, okay? And so they wrote a letter to Thomas Jefferson asking him this. And Jefferson replied. He said he thanked them for their kind prayers because they were praying for his wisdom and all this kind of stuff, and assured that the freedom of religion was an inalienable right. Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptists, 1802, the wall of separation between church and state to prevent government from interfering with religious activities, therefore protecting, not preventing, public religious expressions. That's what it's about. It's not saying, no, you can't have God in the government. That is absolutely 180 degrees off. In 1853, they tried to petition the court. They went to Congress urging separation. They threw up this separation of church and state, and they wanted to get chaplains removed from the military. And anyway, it didn't work. They ruled on it in 1854 that had the people or the founding fathers during the Revolution had a suspicion of any attempt to war against Christianity, the revolution would have been strangled in its cradle. At the time of the adoption of the Constitution and the amendments, the universal sentiment was that Christianity should be encouraged, but not one denomination. It is in this age there is no substitute for Christianity. That was the religion of the founders of the Republic, and they expected to remain that way for their descendants. This nation is a Christian nation. Always has been, and it needs to become that way again. Okay? They tried it again in 1879. It failed miserably again. This time they tried to take it out of context a little bit. Didn't work. They ruled against it 8-0. Okay? Now, something happened in the turn of the century, around 1910. From what I can gather, somebody said it. I read somewhere. Somebody said it best. Said that people shifted from thinkers to learners. See, they didn't have their biblical worldview anymore. That's what caused them to think through the process, think through the decisions. Whereas now, all they're doing is just learning. Whatever, right or wrong, whatever it is, they're just taking it and learning it and just regurgitating it over and over and over again, okay? So in 1947, Emerson versus Board of Education ruled 5-4 that was the first case to use the Establishment Clause as binding upon states citing Jefferson's separation metaphor out of context. The separation of church and state, that has been used in multiple court cases, 4,000 or 5,000 cases. The First Amendment was erected as a wall between the church and state. That wall must be kept high and impregnable. We could not approve the slightest breach. That's Hugo Black, 1947. 1962, ruled 6-1, it was unconstitutional for a student to say a voluntary prayer in school. Ordered separation of religious principles from education. No precedent. 1980, now we're getting new, okay? Rule 5-4, that posting the 10 Commandments in the public school classroom violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment because the purpose of the display was essentially religious. Well, yeah. Anyway. This here's good. If the posted copies of the 10 Commandments are to have any effect at all, it will be to induce the school children to read, meditate upon, and perhaps venerate and obey the 10 Commandments. Duh. It is not a permissible state objective under the Establishment Clause. See, what they've done is they've taken something and they've twisted it, taken it out of context. Right. And that's what they do. Now, good news. Texas Senate passes a bill requiring 10 commandments in every classroom, April 21st of this year. Pretty good. And the author of said, the United States was founded on the separation of church and state. It's in the Constitution and everything. No, it's not. No, it isn't. Idiot. Anyway. Now, this is something that I think comes to the heart of how did we get here? How in the world are we getting all of these weird, stupid rulings from the court? Okay? How many of you have ever heard we have 3 co-equal branches of government? We don't. I heard that on TV just the other day. We have 3 co-equal branches of government. No, you don't. That's a lie. That's a bold-faced lie. Let's take a look. If you look at the comparison of powers, here's Congress, the legislative branch, the president, the executive branch, and the judiciary is way down there on the bottom. Do those look equal to you? No, not at all. But what happened was, let's move on. About to get in trouble here. Alexander Hamilton says, it proves incontestably that the judiciary is beyond comparison the weakest of the 3 departments of power. It can never attack with success either of the 2, and that all possible care is requisite to enable it to defend itself against their attacks. Now, hang on a minute. I mean, so long as the judiciary remains truly distinct from both legislature and executive, liberty can have nothing to fear from the judiciary alone, but would have everything to fear from its union with either of the other departments. That's exactly what's happened. You ever heard of legislating from the bench? Okay. The judiciary has no influence, either the sword or the purse, no direction either of the strength of the wealth of the society, and can take no active resolution whatever. It may truly be said to have neither force nor will, but merely judgment. What's happened is the judiciary has teamed up with either the executive branch or the legislative branch. And now, and we believe it. We believe that when a Supreme Court case comes down and they rule, it's over. It's law. It's done. It's over. You notice on the top of all of the cases, it says it is the opinion of the court. Not the decree, not the law. It is the opinion of the court. They have neither sword nor purse. They don't have the power to back it up. They don't have the money to pay for it. All they are is just, here it is. This is what we think it says. In fact, Stephen King, you know him, okay? He said, constitutionally, Congress can reduce the judiciary to nothing more than Chief Justice Roberts at a card table with a candle. You only got to have one. You don't even have to have 9. All you got to have is one. And people go, huh? I've never heard of that before. Because you don't know the real history. Okay? Now, I'm going to end this with a story. I'm going to be early tonight. But anyway. Long time ago, drawing a blank here. Let me get back here. John Quincy Adams had what he believed was a mandate from God to abolish slavery. Okay? He was absolutely firmly convinced that it was his job to abolish slavery. And he was in the Congress for 20 years or more. Kept fighting, and it was 80% against him. Because everybody had slaves at the time. Okay? And he just kept getting beat up and beat up and beat up. In fact, it even got so bad, they were threatening to kill him, to shut him up. They put out these little handbills with a target on his forehead, okay, and just distributed around the country. They wanted somebody to shut this guy up because he just would not quit. Kind of like Marjorie Taylor Greene, just keeps going on and on and on and never quits. That's a good thing. Well, toward the end of his life, he realized that he was about to run out of gas. And he found this young protege. And the last few months of his life, he poured everything into him. Okay? Just on and on and on. And then that protege was Abraham Lincoln. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing the slaves. Interesting thing about that, the Supreme Court said, you can't do that. He said, watch me. He said, that's just your opinion. He realized that the judiciary, the Supreme Court, did not have the authority like we see today. We see the authority today of the Supreme Court, bow down, okay? No, that's just an opinion, okay? So don't get fooled by that. But anyway, that's really about all I've got for tonight. I knew this was going to be kind of boring, but it was great. It's some interesting history. I would strongly suggest that you go and get you one of these. They're free, okay? And hand them out and actually read it. It's really interesting when you actually go read this stuff, Another thing I thought was kind of interesting, kind of pertains to last week. Oh, yeah. Article 1, Section 10, I highlighted it in yellow, said, talk about gold and silver, it says, you can, any state can use gold and silver coin as tender in payments of debts. That's the reason 23 different states have already come out saying they're wanting to switch back to this. People are starting to wake up to what's in this little book. This thing right here is the only thing that's kept this country, short of the sovereign hand of God, but in the natural, this is the only thing that's kept this country together. Amen. You know, and I think it's kind of important that people actually know what's in it, you know, and take the time to read it, you know. So anyway, if anybody has any questions or anything, be glad to try to look at them. Oh, if anybody is interested in the difference between a republic and a democracy, right here, there's a website down toward the end of it, wherever it was. It's at the end of did you find it? I put it at the end of the slide. If anybody wants to take a look at it, it gives a really good little brief history of the difference between, next one. There it is, right there. You can click on that, or you can take a screenshot of it or what have you, if you want to learn the difference between that. Also, one other thing I found was kind of interesting. This is on Axios right here. It says reverse ATMs. Anybody ever heard of, everybody knows what an ATM machine is? Yes. Have you heard of a reverse ATM? No. Reverse ATMs take bills and dispense cards as stores go cashless. Folks, it's coming. Get ready, okay? I'm not interested in fear-mongering anybody. That's not my point at all. But I want people to go into stuff wide open, with their eyes wide open. See what's going on, okay? It is going digital. We just need to be very cautious and know where we're going. That's all, okay? Now, I've had people come up to me after, what should I do? You know, what should I do this? I said, listen, I'm not afraid at all to put my money where my mouth is. I have never had a problem with that. But I'm not going to take your money and put it where my mouth is. That's up to you. Now, all I can do is tell you what's going on, what the truth is, and if people want to accept it, fine. If they want to just put their head down and just keep on with the same old, that's up to them, okay? I'm not trying to convince anybody to do anything they don't want to do at all right? But times are a-changing. There are some things coming down the pike real soon. Actually, I'm excited about it, because if we look at the corrupt system that we've had for the last 100+ years, I think, personally, my opinion, it's getting ready to go by the wayside, okay? And I'm looking forward to being able to change it in a godly way. Amen. Being able to direct it the way it needs to be. Yes. Okay? Now, anybody have any questions, comments, complaints, whatever? I'm surprised you even showed up after last week, you know. So, and I think it'll still stay on YouTube. I think. I didn't mention anybody. No. Didn't say anything bad. You know, didn't talk about any of this stuff. Didn't say anything. So. I quit while I'm ahead.
Amen. I don't know if you guys really realize how much research and work you just heard. And he's put it into this format for you. So, Lee, we thank you for that, buddy. God bless you. We thank you. All right. Well, with that said, let's go out excited and let's share Jesus with somebody this week. Amen? Amen. See you Sunday morning at 9 or 11. Amen. See you.